161 this year. Yes. Thank you. Okay, so founded in 1864 as a refuge to orphan children, Children's Village of Ottawa Carleton has evolved over the years to meet the changing needs of children and their families. My apologies. During its first century, this charitable not-for-profit organization operated, as I said, as an orphanage, an infant's home, a children's hospital, and a group daycare program. For a time, it also offered a shelter to what they used to call back then friendless, gentle women and the elderly who had neither the family nor the means to support themselves. Children's Village today continues to offer innovative programs, such as a large home childcare program, early learning center, which you would know as a childcare centers, playgroups, summer camps, etc., etc. So if you do want to know more about us, I invite you to just Google a name and it'll bring you to our website, and everything we do will be displayed on our website. Now, the reason I stand before you this morning is that I have the great honor to introduce a dedicated leader who has worked tirelessly to improve the lives of Canadians. As a minister, she plays a vital role in shaping policies that directly impact families, children, and the most vulnerable members of our society. Her unwavering commitment to social development and her leadership in creating a more inclusive and equitable Canada has earned her the respect and admiration of many. Please join me in welcoming to the podium Minister of Families, Children and Social Development, the Honourable Jenna Sudds.
Thank you so much for that warm welcome, and really great to be here today, of course, with our amazing Prime Minister and my dear colleague, MP Yasir Naqvi. And my sincere thanks to our host today, the Children's Village. It's incredible to be here. It's incredible to see this amazing centre in my community here in Canada. I do want to, just before I begin, acknowledge that there is a lot of uncertainty right now that I know people are feeling due to the unnecessary tariffs being implemented by our southern neighbours. And I want you to know, as Canadians, that your government will do whatever it takes to support you, your jobs, and your families. So, au cours de deux dernières années, j'ai visité des centres dans tout le Canada et les histoires que j'ai entendues me reviennent à l'esprit. Stories from parents from all corners of our amazing country, stories from early childhood educators and childcare providers who benefit or who participate in our National Early Learning and Childcare Program. I recall a conversation from a dad in Guelph at the YMCA who shared how his son had special needs, but how the center that his son was at, the YMCA, was providing such outstanding care that gave him comfort that his son was well taken care of in that amazing center. I recall a conversation with Yvonne in Bridgewater, Nova Scotia, a childcare operator who shared with me how essential the investments that we've been making in childcare in this country are, and how it has been incredible for the families in her community that her centre works with. Last week, I was in Iqaluit, and interestingly enough, on my plane ride there, I met a mom who was returning back home who shared that she has 2 young children in childcare in Iqaluit, and that she was literally saving $10,000 a year times 2, $20,000 in childcare fees because of the investments that we have made in creating this affordable, accessible childcare program. These stories I have the pleasure of hearing in every single province and territory across this country. These investments have been historic And the progress that we have made in just a short amount of time is truly, truly amazing. These parents have shared what it's meant to them, what it's meant to their families, their ability to get ahead, their ability to save for the future, and the ability to invest in themselves and their careers, returning to the workforce should they choose to, being able to pursue their hopes and their dreams in their careers as well. It's making a real difference. We've seen women's participation in the workforce reach all-time highs. And luckily, most of the provinces and territories have shared that vision. And I want to thank the many ministers across this province, across the country, all provinces and territories that I've had the pleasure of working with in making this become a reality. The deals that we've signed with governments across across the country have been historic, and it is great to see the provincial and territorial governments alongside understanding and recognizing that affordable childcare is good for parents, it's good for kids, and it's really good for our economy. And that's why we're here today, to ensure that these savings, this impact, this high-quality childcare is available now, but also far into the future. For the parents I mentioned, the parents here in Canada, the parents across the country, parents like many of you. Pierre Poilievre has made it clear. He has made it clear that he would cut this program for parents like all of you. He has said that he will oppose this program until his dying day. If he was to be elected, if he was to be in government, he would raise the prices and he would take us back into history. But your Liberal government will not let that happen. For parents who want these savings to continue, who want high-quality care for their kids, for Canadians who care about the parents and the children in their lives, Pierre is the wrong choice at the wrong time. But know this, with our Liberal government, the benefits that have come from the $10 a day childcare program will not stop. And thanks to today's announcement to come, our childcare system will continue to save parents money and give your children the best possible start in life. So with that, it is my great pleasure to introduce our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau.
Merci Jenna, merci à Marianne et les amis du Children's Village de nous accueillir ici ce matin. Good morning, everyone. But before I begin, I want to address what I know is top of mind for all Canadians. Yesterday, I spoke with President Trump, and I reiterated the facts. Our border is secure, and less than 1% of the illegal fentanyl entering the United States comes from Canada. Even so, we took action with our $1.3 billion plan to further strengthen our border. I also stressed that the tariffs the U.S. administration chose to impose will hurt American workers and businesses, and that, as our shared history has proven, we should work together instead to tackle today's challenges rather than fighting one another. Canada's ministers, officials, and I will continue to engage with our American counterparts. Our goal remains to get these tariffs, all tariffs, removed. In the meantime, we'll be taking action to support Canadians through the tough times ahead. You can count on leadership right across the country, municipalities, provinces, and indeed, your federal government. But mostly, you can continue to count on each other. Canadians have been there for each other, for small businesses, for local producers, for friends. Canadians will pull together and continue to pull together with deep, deep pride in country as all of us stand together to defend Canada. En même temps de faire le nécessaire pour protéger nos travailleurs et nos entreprises, on continue notre travail pour rendre la vie plus abordable pour les familles canadiennes et notre classe moyenne. Et c'est ce qui nous rassemble ici aujourd'hui. Merci de vous joindre à Myriam, Jenna, Yasser et moi pour une annonce qui est un peu un retour aux sources pour moi. Aider la classe moyenne et les familles qui en font partie, c'était au cœur des raisons pour lesquelles je me suis présenté pour servir les Canadiens en 2015. J'ai toujours pris cet engagement au sérieux, j'ai agi en conséquence et je vais continuer de le faire jusqu'à ma toute dernière seconde en tant que Premier ministre. On a lancé l'allocation canadienne pour enfants qui a sorti des centaines de milliers d'enfants et de familles de la pauvreté. Les enfants étaient une des priorités dans notre régime canadien de soins dentaires et ces enfants étaient parmi les premiers à y avoir accès. On a créé notre programme national d'alimentation scolaire qui, en plus d'aider les enfants à mieux réussir à l'école et à grandir en meilleure santé, va permettre aux parents d'économiser des centaines de dollars par année. Et on a aussi lancé notre programme pan-canadien pour les garderies, grâce auquel on est rassemblés ici aujourd'hui. Now, since 2015, my focus, our focus, has been on stepping up for Canadian families and the middle class. We've done it with middle-class tax cuts, with the Canada Child Benefit that has lifted hundreds of thousands of kids out of poverty, the school food program, dental care, and childcare. Childcare being the reason we're gathered here today. For decades in this country, people have been talking about creating a national childcare system. And to be fair, sometimes governments got close, but it just never got done. Then in 2020, the pandemic showed everyone what many parents, advocates, and smart economists already knew. Childcare is not a luxury, it's a necessity. It's not just a nice-to-have social program, it's a foundational building block of a strong economy. So we worked like hell with provinces, territories, and providers, drawing on the successful experience of 25 years in Quebec to make it a reality right across the country. And it wasn't a moment too soon. In recent years, our program supported families through a cost of living crisis, and it even helped avoid a recession. Families were able to save thousands of dollars on childcare, just as global inflation and interest rates jacked up their mortgages and squeezed their family budgets hard. It's been and continues to be a game changer for so many of them. Now, when we first committed to Canada-wide early learning and childcare, we said we would cut fees quickly and create 250,000 $10-a-day childcare spaces. We heard a lot of naysayers. But today, it's hard for those folks to deny the facts. As of this year, 150,000 new affordable spaces have been created or funded, and we are on track to reach our goal of creating 100,000 more by this time next year. Today, families are saving thousands of dollars thanks to this program. Per child, per year, savings can reach $6,000 in Nova Scotia, over $10,000 in Ontario, and over $13,000 in Alberta. Per child. See, this is great news, not only for parents, not only for kids, but for our entire economy. Childcare means that parents, especially mothers, can choose to fully participate in our workforce because they don't have to decide between their career and their children. It helped reduce the gender wage gap, child poverty, and inequality. In 2015, women were earning 84 cents on the dollar. Today, that's up to 88 cents, still not good enough, but climbing. In 2015, over 16% of Canadians under 18 lived in poverty. Today, it's less than 10%. Again, still not enough, but it is significant progress that has not just led to better outcomes for individuals and better quality of life for people, but it's led to better economic growth for entire country. And childcare is a matter of fairness. It strengthens our economy, makes it more resilient, and that's never been as important as it is right now. Now, we can be proud of the progress we've seen since 2021, but I think all Canadians know that we can't take that progress for granted. As Jenna mentioned, Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party of Canada never believed in childcare. They always voted and campaigned against it at every opportunity. In fact, they voted against each and every one of the measures to help Canadian families in the middle class that I just listed. Now, right now, we have a Canada-wide childcare program that is off to a phenomenal start. But the 5-year agreements we first signed with the provinces and territories are expiring next March. And that's a source of concern for providers, for parents, and for provinces. People are worried about what will happen next year. I think of a family I met. Those kids 3 years old in childcare. They're worried that suddenly their costs are going to go up from $10 back to $40, $50 a day. They can't handle that in this economy. I think about young families that I meet that are excited about starting a family, but worried that they might have missed the window on childcare. That a change in government could mean, nope, $10 a day childcare was a blip that helped a few, but won't be there for them into the future. As a country, we simply cannot go back to making families pay the equivalent of a monthly mortgage payment for childcare. I think we all understand that building a Canada-wide childcare system that will stand the test of time will take more than just a couple of years. We are building an entire system almost from scratch, in the sense that the coordination, the impact varied widely from region to region, from province to province. So creating a national expectation that wherever you are, wherever you're raising your family in this country, you can rely on the support that affordable, quality childcare will give you, is one of those things that is nation building. Young families and our early childhood educators and providers need reliable, long-term funding to plan for the future, to plan for Canada's future. On a personal level, I've made sure that every single day in this office, I put Canadians first, that I have people's backs. And that's why I'm here to tell you all that we got you. Even in the very last days of this government, we will not let Canadians down today and long into the future. Because in the past few weeks, we've been working with our provincial and territorial partners to make sure that families can rely on this system, not just for years to come, but will allow this system to lock in, to become something that no government, a year from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now, could ever go back on. And it's hard to do, because there is nothing one government can't do that can't be undone by the following government, unless Canadians are very clear on the need to keep this going. So we are going to make sure that more Canadians over the coming years understand that childcare is a foundational building block of what it means to be Canadian, like healthcare or social programs or cheering at a Canadian anthem. Today, we have great news to share. We've reached a deal with 11 of 13 provinces and territories to extend current early learning and childcare agreements until March 2031. And not only are we extending current agreements, we're also increasing the funding that these agreements provide by 3% per year to help provinces and territories deal with costs that we know will rise over the coming years. It includes funding for 35,000 affordable spaces across nearly 1,000 Indigenous early learning and childcare sites, including more than 10 new centres in Métis communities, with more to be created in the next 2 years. And on childcare, we're also stepping up directly in federal jurisdiction by making sure that military families have the childcare supports they need. In recent years, I've had the honor of meeting many of the men and women in our armed forces, and childcare is a concern that I repeatedly heard about. The Canadian Armed Forces protect Canadians and our freedoms every single day, both abroad and at home. They and their families sacrifice much to serve Canada and Canadians, and they should have reliable, affordable access to quality childcare. That's why we're working with not-for-profit childcare providers to expand near bases and creating opportunities for scholarships for interested CAF family members to train and certify as early childhood educators. We're also creating a network of childcare coordinators to help families as they move from base to base quickly connect to local childcare resources. And by doing so, we're also encouraging more Canadians to join our armed forces, because they'll know that they can raise a family and defend and serve our country all at the same time, that we see the needs to support military families. Now, your federal Liberal government got it done, but Liberal, Progressive Conservative and NDP provincial governments are all a part of today's agreement, and that is great. That is as it must be. Because helping families, helping the middle class, that's not just a Liberal priority, that's a Canadian priority. All parties, all governments must press forward until there is an affordable childcare space for every family that wants them long into the future. And if we persist, a few years from now, Canadians will rightly view childcare as one of the foundational pillars of our economy, of our society. And I know that decades from now, future generations will benefit hugely from the choices we all made together today, as it should be. Merci beaucoup, mes amis. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. We will now begin the question period. One question, one follow-up. First question goes to David Aiken, Global News.
Good morning, Prime Minister.
Good morning, David.
I'd like to hear more about that phone call with the President yesterday. I wonder if you can describe the tone, the tenor, the scope. I understand some profanity emerged in that call. Maybe you can explain the context in which that happened. Can you give us some color on that phone?
I can confirm that it was a colorful call, and it was also a very substantive call. We talked about a range of issues, of course, primarily the trade war that they have chosen to unjustly launch on Canada, but there is also a recognition that our two countries are deeply interwoven, not just in our economy, but in our people-to-people ties and our history. And we should be able to continue to do big things together as we have over many years in the past, first and foremost by negotiating and signing an extraordinarily successful USMCA CUSMA deal. But that there's more to do, and we committed to continue to work together constructively. Okay. Les appels avec Donald sont toujours intéressantes. Celle-ci était colorée, mais aussi constructive. On a parlé évidemment de la guerre commerciale qu'ils ont lancée de façon absolument injustifiée contre le Canada. Mais on s'est engagé à continuer de travailler ensemble pour essayer de trouver des façons de créer des avantages et des bénéfices et des opportunités pour les citoyens et les travailleurs des deux côtés de notre frontière, et les conversations continuent.
I want to maybe come back to that again. Certainly someone on the other side thought it important enough to note that profanity, that it was a heated exchange, to tell a reporter at the Wall Street Journal. And we're in the business, we know these things don't get out there by accident. There was a purpose, I assume, that the American side had. So can we get a sense of where did it become heated? Is it he doesn't accept the facts of the case? Tell us what's going on here.
I'm not going to get into it in details, but there were different sections of the conversation in which different approaches and tones. But I've been having conversations and working with Donald for over 8 years now, and a lot of it is rolling with it. A lot of it is figuring out how to move forward constructively despite certain unpredictabilities that often come in, and remembering to stay steady no matter what. And that is the approach I've always taken. A firmness around standing up for Canadians, but an understanding that we can and should be working together to create benefits on both sides of the border, because that's how we benefit the most. Our two countries do best when we're working together, and that is what I will continue to advocate for.
Next question.
Good morning, Prime Minister. Ashley Burke, CBC News. After that call with the President yesterday, do you have any sense of what he's doing and if these tariffs can be dropped?
We are actively engaged in ongoing conversations about trying to make sure that these tariffs don't overly harm, certainly in the short term, certain sectors or indeed a vast range of Canadian and American workers. I'm not going to get into it too much because there are ongoing conversations and we don't yet have anything to officially announce. But I will say the focus we have right now is on reducing the impacts of the tariffs. I can confirm that we will continue to be in a trade war that was launched by the United States for the foreseeable future. So Canadians should continue to buy Canadian, continue to stand up for each other, but we are trying to reduce the areas and the impact that these tariffs that the Americans are bringing in will have on Canadian workers. But Canada will continue to stand firm and unequivocal that as long as there are tariffs on us from the United States that are completely unjustified, we will be responding strongly. But there is more to say as these conversations continue.
Do you think they can be dropped? And then also when it comes to this announcement today, how important is it to you that these bigger programs that you've designed stay in place after you leave?
First of all, our priority is to continue to work very, very hard every day to get these tariffs to be dropped. There should be no tariffs between Canada and the United States, not just because we have a free trade agreement that says there should be no tariffs between us, but because it is good for the Canadian economy and the American economy. It is good for Americans and Canadians for us to be working together on big things, particularly in an uncertain world. So the goal is get these tariffs off. Now, the Americans are continuing to look at different steps, including the early April marker of larger commercial and trade reflections, not just with Canada, but with the world. And that is very much something that we are working towards as well. But our focus is on ending this trade war, and until we do, we will continue to stay strong for Canadians, and Canadians will continue to stay strong with each other. In regards to this announcement today, so much of what I've focused on over the past number of years has been focused on longer-term impacts. And perhaps it's the example of having heard all my life about a small handful of things that my father was able to do as Prime Minister that continue to have an impact in people's lives today, 30, 40, 50 years later. think of the Charter of Rights and Freedoms. I think of Official Bilingualism and Official Languages Act. I think of multiculturalism and a few other things that really shaped Canada. So even as we were doing things to make an impact in the immediate, to help Canadians, to drop their childcare fees to $10 a day, for example, to step up on dental care, to deliver a Canada Child benefit that has had a huge impact from coast to coast to coast over the past decade, the thinking has always been not just how does this do well right now and help us in a short term politically or have a political impact short term, but how does this change Canada for the better in resilient ways long into the future? Having $10 a day childcare right across the country for decades and generations to come will have an impact, yes, on immediate affordability for families, but think of the kids that were able to go to quality early learning and childcare and get that best start when they show up in grade 1. That impact will carry them through their lives, particularly as more and more studies have shown that those crucial early years shape a young person and eventually an adult's life. Think about the choices that we can make as we look at a strained labor market that has more women, because let's talk about moms, those are the people who are most squeezed in terms of child rearing, to be able to have the confidence and the full choice to stay at home or to advance their career. That changes, not just right now, but it changes for years to come. So the focus that I certainly have in these my last days is making sure that some of those things that we have done that will shape the country for the long term are seen and relied upon by Canadians now and into the coming years, so that no political party, regardless of ideology, will ever think it is a good idea to take away some of these foundational elements. That doesn't mean we don't have lots of debates over conservatives who want to privatize healthcare, for example. Healthcare is one of the pillars we all understand, and there's still political debates on it, and there will still be political debates on it. But having families know and be able to rely on $10 a day childcare means that particular element of it will be very hard for any future government to turn back, and that is a good thing for Canadians, for families, and for the future of our economy.
Question.
Bonjour, Monsieur le Premier ministre. Valérie Gamache de Radio-Canada. Hier, l'administration Trump a annoncé quand même un sursis de 30 jours pour les constructeurs automobiles. Il y a d'autres sursis dans l'air. Qu'est-ce que ça vous dit de voir que Donald Trump met déjà de l'eau dans son vin?
Mais, ce qu'on dit depuis des semaines, c'est que des tarifs américains sur des produits canadiens vont faire très mal à l'économie américaine, va mener à des mises à pied de citoyens américains, de travailleurs américains, va avoir un coût direct sur les bourses américaines. Et on est en train de voir que tout ça est réel. On le dit depuis le début, on ne peut pas mettre des tarifs sur le Canada sans sentir des impacts extrêmement négatifs sur l'économie américaine. Et je pense que l'administration américaine, même s'ils aiment beaucoup les tarifs, reconnaissent que des tarifs sur l'industrie automobile ou sur d'autres industries vont faire très mal aux Américains et donc sont en train de regarder s'ils peuvent mettre un certain délai là-dessus ou sur certains impacts pour plus les aligner avec le 1er avril, au début avril, où il y a une autre réflexion sur les tarifs globales.
Et outre la levée complète des tarifs, est-ce qu'il y a un scénario où le Canada pourrait décider de reporter la deuxième vague de tarifs?
On est en train d'avoir des discussions concrètes à ce niveau-là, mais comme j'ai dit, nous n'enlèverons pas les tarifs canadiens en réponse aux Américains tant que les tarifs américains demeurent en place. There are obviously conversations ongoing right now with the U.S. administration, but as I've said a number of times, we will not be backing down from our response tariffs until such a time as the unjustified American tariffs on Canadian goods are lifted.
Michael Trudeau, CBC News. After this USMA signing, everyone called it a win-win-win. When you consider what Donald Trump is going for here, or no, sorry, how he sees negotiations, what do you think he's going for here then?
You know, this is something that I've reflected on a fair bit, because the USMCA, the CUSMA in Canada, was a win-win. And we've seen a win-win-win for Mexico as well. We've seen over the past years, since we signed this landmark modernized trade agreement that Donald Trump led on, the jobs have been created, economies have grown, we've strengthened our North American competitiveness faced with challenges from around the world. It has been really good for all three of our countries. We do see, however, that President Trump's approach has consistently been America first. And the big argument that we have to continue to make is that America first happens best when Canadians and Mexicans are prospering as well. That a win-lose between us would actually be worse for them than a win-win. That's true in international trade, in relations between nation states. It perhaps is not true in real estate deals. That a win-lose is probably better for someone who is experienced in business deals than a win-win. But when it comes to countries, win-wins are actually the best outcomes. And that is an argument that we've continued to make many times, and that I've personally made many times with the President. And there is no better example of that than the extraordinary success we have created, Canadians and Americans together, in the most successful economic partnership in the history of the world. Je pense qu'il y a une réflexion que la renégociation de l'ALENA qu'on a faite ensemble il y a 6 ans est sans aucun doute gagnant-gagnant. Gagnant avec le Mexique aussi, parce que les 3 pays ont vu de la croissance économique, de la création d'emplois, des bénéfices réels et tangibles sur la croissance économique et sur la compétitivité, avec un monde de plus en plus incertain et plein de défis pour nos entreprises, pour nos travailleurs, pour nos citoyens, pour notre pays. Et entre les pays, la meilleure chose pour n'importe quel pays, c'est effectivement gagnant-gagnant avec le voisin. Un accord gagnant-perdant entre 2 pays n'est pas aussi bon, même pour le gagnant, qu'un gagnant-gagnant. Et c'est une particularité d'échanges commerciaux entre pays, c'est une réalité internationale qui n'est peut-être pas aussi évidente dans le monde des affaires. Alors, ça fait plusieurs années que les conversations avec nos amis américains sont ancrées dans le fait que le meilleur gagnant pour les États-Unis, c'est quelque chose qui est aussi gagnant et pour le Canada et pour le Mexique, qui va nous permettre d'être plus résilients et compétitifs face à des enjeux économiques à travers le monde.
We've seen a lot of unity amongst premiers against these tariffs. If President Trump decides to make a carve-out for energy, are you concerned that that will be tested and that we won't see that unity as firm with premiers in energy-producing provinces like Danielle Smith or Scott Moe?
I think, first of all, any carve-outs that support any workers in Canada, even if it's just one industry or another, are going to be a good thing. To see lessening impacts of these tariffs is certainly something that I think is of concern, and it's a good thing for people on both sides of the border. But as I've said repeatedly, Canadians are in this together. And if some industries don't have the same kinds of pressure, we're going to be leaning on all Canadians to be there for certain industries that are facing a little more pressure. We need to make sure, more than just about anything else, that Canadians remain united across provinces and regions, across industries and sectors, that we all understand we're in this together. And if someone gets an exemption or someone manages to hold through, well, that's great, because money that we might have spent on supporting them can be spent better on supporting people who are still being hit by this. So we will be open to any exemptions and exceptions, but we also will reemphasize we are in a trade war with the United States that they launched unjustifiably. We're going to continue to be strong and resolute in our response, and we will continue to be there for each other, because the unity that Canadians are feeling right now is actually the most important thing in being able to stand up against a trading partner that is much bigger than us, but is facing real internal debates and divisions on the impacts of these unjustified tariffs, particularly on Canada.
Mia Rabson from the Canadian Press. Secretary Letnick has just said that President Trump is going to, or likely to, decide today to exempt all USMCA compliant trade from the tariffs until April 2nd, not just autos as reported yesterday. What's your take on that? Does that have any impact on Canada's response?
That aligns with some of the conversations that we have been having with administration officials, but I'm going to wait for an official agreement to talk about Canadian response or and look at the details of it. But it is a promising sign, but I will highlight that it means that the tariffs remain in place, and therefore our response will remain in place. Okay. Écoutez, ce que j'entends, ce que M. Letnick aurait dit, est aligné avec les conversations qu'on est en train d'avoir avec lui et d'autres dans l'administration, mais je ne vais pas me prononcer là-dessus tant qu'on n'aura pas un accord final et qu'on comprenne tout à fait toutes les implications. Mais je vais souligner que même s'il y a un peu de répit pour un mois dans bien des secteurs ou plusieurs secteurs, ça ne veut pas dire qu'on n'est quand même pas en guerre commerciale lancée par les Américains, qu'on ne doit pas tout faire pour protéger les Canadiens et qu'on ne va pas continuer avec notre réponse ferme. Mais je suis certain que si on arrive à un accord, on aura la chance d'en parler plus. Je ne veux pas me prononcer avant qu'on en arrive là de façon officielle.
There's uncertainty in the situation, not just from what's going on in the White House, but also in Canada with your expected departure, possibly days away, and also pending an election. Are you worried about that having an impact on Canada's ability to continue negotiating with the United States? And are you considering playing some kind of caretaker role up to and including staying on as a caretaker PM for a bit?
No, I will not be. That I look forward to a transition to my duly elected successor in the coming days or week. What I will say, however, is regardless of our democratic processes, the fact that Canadians are as united as they are across provincial leadership representing many different parties, across an approach that has Canadians pulling together and being strong on defending Canada and focused on creating the kind of growth and resilience in our economy that we need, I think it'll be fine that there be very clear ideas about who and how the country should move forward in an eventual federal election, whenever it does happen. It'll be an opportunity for Canadians to decide, how they want to respond best in the coming years. And the unity of Canadians, even if there are political debates going on, the unity of Canadians is the single most powerful tool we have in our negotiations, in our engagement, in our standing up against these unjustified tariffs.
Thank you, Prime Minister. This will be the last question.
Tonda Charles, Toronto Star. Prime Minister, to yesterday's call and your offer to Trump that you would hold off the bigger package of counter tariffs Canada is planning if he allows more exemptions, more carve-outs. I'm wondering why you would compromise in that fashion, given what you've just described as a larger looming threat on April 2nd for the reciprocal tariffs. And we have up to 300% tariffs on U.S. dairy products in some cases. So how are you going to effectively push back against him if you're prepared to offer a big compromise like that?
I understand how much the media loves to speculate given on this, that thing that they've heard. We're in negotiations right now. When I have an announcement to make about how we're going to move forward, we will make it. What I will say is we are in a moment right now where Canada has a very, very strong bargaining position, because Canadians are so united and unequivocal about standing up for our country, standing up for our fellow citizens, and being very, very firm that this is an absolutely unjustified and unjustifiable trade war launched by the Americans, and that is what we're going to continue to stay true to.
Your Foreign Affairs Minister yesterday called all of this a psychodrama. How do you characterize it?
Thursday. I've had 10 years of Donald Trump won, historic, once-in-a-century pandemic, inflation crises, war in Ukraine as Russia returns to war in Europe, as the Middle East is facing extraordinarily difficult situations. These have been complicated times. This is the job I signed up for. This is the job I will continue to do until the very last moment I'm doing this job. And it comes with the territory to be steady and strong for Canadians.
You seem to get pretty emotional about it. You're leading it.
This has been the honor of my life, serving Canadians.
Monsieur Trudeau, sur la situation de la ministre des Affaires étrangères hier sur le psychodrame, quelle traduction voyez de la déclaration?
Mélanie parle très bien anglais, vous pourriez lui poser cette question-là. Pour moi, c'est inscrit dans des années qui ont été pleines de défis. Ça n'a pas été un 10 ans facile dans le monde, ni au Canada, avec l'arrivée de Donald Trump pour un premier mandat, avec une pandémie historique extrêmement difficile, avec l'inflation, avec la Russie qui a envahi l'Europe en Ukraine, avec les défis au Moyen-Orient, avec plein d'autres défis qu'on a vus. Ça a été des années mouvementées, mais de rester ferme et ancré dans les valeurs canadiennes et le service aux Canadiens pour le court terme et le long terme, ça a toujours été ma façon de fonctionner.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. That
Merci
concludes
tout le monde.
today's press conference.
Thank you so much.